Hello friends, Laurie McFarland here with Cross My Heart Ministry. It's time for this week's edition of Martha Monday. Well, as the end of June approaches and it's almost time for July, that means of course that it's time to release our latest and greatest version of the Do It List. Our July Do It List is just like every other month. We include spots here across the bottom with daily tasks. On the top left here we have weekly tasks, and then the tasks that are for the month that change out. So if you are a new viewer and this is your first time, you might want to check the playlist or do a search for some of our previous Do It List videos where we kind of explain in depth about how this works. But for all of you regulars, you know what this is all about. It's just a simple one-page approach to helping you keep home and hearth organized and neat and tidy. The idea is that if you just chip away a little each day, your house will be organized in no time, freeing you up to do things that are much more important. And so we just try to get into that maintenance mode. I have found during my many years of living on this planet that's a lot easier to keep a clean house clean and an organized house organized. So what we do each month when we present and release our new free download, and you can check the link below in the show notes to download your very own copy, we choose one of the items on the list and kind of unpack that and talk about that a little bit. But today I'm going to do something just a little different as we present the July Do It List, because it is the month of July, and because we know that July is the month of the 4th, we celebrate our country's birthday. But maybe you didn't know that July is also the month when we celebrate blueberries. Yes, July is National Blueberry Month. And so what I want to do today, as I present the Do It List, is present also a fun recipe, because blueberries are so healthy. There's lots of links out there, lots of information online that let you know and clue you into all the great health benefits that come from blueberries. And you're probably aware of those. They're called a superfruit. They're just packed full of nutrients and antioxidants that help us fight aging and help us protect against cancer. Some other studies out there even suggest that they can lower our risk of heart disease, lower our blood pressure, perhaps fight off cholesterol, lower our cholesterol. They're low in calories, high in health benefits, and more than that, they are just right down yummy and delicious. So the recipe that I want to share with you today is blueberry pound cake. Now, it does have all the sugar and the carbs and all that stuff, but at least there's one thing in there that's healthy. This is a recipe we've been making in our family for many years. It came from a dear friend who's gone to be with the Lord. Carol Ann Blessing was one of the most godly women that I know. I was just a better person for having been in her presence. She loved the Lord, she loved her family, and she and her husband were our Sunday school teachers when Kevin and I were first married, and this is her recipe. So anytime I make blueberry pound cake, I always think of my friend Carol Ann. So come on over and let's get in the kitchen and make up my recipe for blueberry pound cake. It will be in a link for that as well below if you want to make your own. So come on over. Okay, so we're ready to make our blueberry pound cake. I've got the recipe again. You can print your own. It's pretty straightforward and simple. There really are not that many ingredients. Normally this would be baked in a bundt pan, a little tube pan, but what I'm going to do today is bake this in these little paper baking plates. These are a little bit smaller. These were made by Dayspring, part of the Mary and Martha line. I think they're out of stock. They're not selling these any longer, but I did find something that I think is comparable online at Amazon, and I'll also put that link below if you want to buy your own paper baking tube pans like this. So I have used this sort of paper product for smaller little loaves. I've not used them to make a full-size cake. So we're going to see how that goes. These are a little smaller, so I'm thinking I'm going to get at least 2 and possibly 3 cakes out of this full-sized pound cake. So we'll see how we go. First off is I want to preheat my oven to 325. Mine is a convection oven, so it automatically adjusts at 25 degrees down to 300 when I do it for 325. Gonna get my stand mixer all ready to go. Put that little paddle on here. The recipe calls for a pound of butter. Maybe you didn't know that the reason that pound cake was called pound cake to begin with is because the recipe, traditional recipes for pound cakes used a pound of everything. So I don't know how much a pound of sugar and a pound of flour is, but I am using a pound of butter in this recipe, and of course, nothing too healthy about that, but it sure does make it delicious. But again, we're going to drop in those blueberries to make it healthy. So my butter is nice and soft. I've had it getting softened on the counter, so I'm going to put that in here, and then I'm going to add the sugar and sort of mix these two together until they're just mixed together nicely. They're going to be creamed together. My recipe calls for 2 cups of sugar, so let me just scoop that up and then level that off. So there's 1 cup, and then the 2nd cup. There's just something about anything with blueberries that just feels and tastes like summer. So we're going to get this all mixed up together. Get that going and lock that in, and here we go. Now I'm going to run and get my blueberries out of the freezer in just a moment. While this is creaming together, I wanted to mention that because it is the height of blueberry season, you can find blueberries on sale, you can find them at the farmer's market, or you can Google and find a local blueberry farm where you can either go and pick your own or buy them nice and fresh that somebody has gotten out early that morning and picked for you. I have done all of the above, and sometimes I just wait for them to show up at the grocery store at a great price, and I'll just buy them, throw them all in a Ziploc bag. Now, if I pick them myself, I usually put them out on a tea towel and pick out any leaves or stems or even little critters that may have made their way home in my bucket if my children were helping me, or maybe my husband. But if I just buy them at the grocery store, I get a big 1-gallon Ziploc bag. I just dump the blueberries in there, seal that, and put them in the freezer. You do not need to wash them. In fact, I strongly advise you do not wash them, because if you wash them, they're going to get all stuck together. It's just so much easier to wash them right before you use them. So I usually have 2 or 3 bags of blueberries frozen in my freezer. I'll scoop out a few to throw on my oatmeal in the morning. I'll scoop out a few to make muffins, to make blueberry pound cake. I've also previously presented a video to you here on the channel for blueberry banana bread, and we'll go ahead and add that link below as well if you want to give that a try. But there's so many delicious recipes that use these wonderful, delicious blueberries, and if you go ahead and stockpile them away in your freezer now, they're ready right when you need them. Open up the Ziploc bag, scoop out how many you need, zip it back, and leave them in the freezer. So I've left mine in the freezer. I'm going to pause the video right when I'm ready for the blueberries, and I'll run and grab those. Okay, so while we've been talking, the sugar and the butter is getting nicely creamed together. I'm just going to stop that and scrape down the sides just a little bit, but it's all getting mixed in there nicely. I'm going to go ahead and add my eggs. It tells us that we need to add the eggs 1 at a time and then beat until fluffy. So let me do that. Put 1 egg here, drop that in. I'm going to just let it start mixing. There's egg number 1, egg number 2, and I really do always like to break my eggs in a separate container just in case I get a little eggshell in there and I don't want to try to find it in the batter. So there's 2 eggs. Number 3, and sure enough, there is a little shell. And I've just demonstrated what I was talking about. So let me grab a little spoon that I can get it out with so that it doesn't end up in my cake batter. There we go, got him. Okay, so there's number 3, and 1 more egg makes 4. Okay, there we go. Got the eggs out of the way. We're done with that. Then we're going to go ahead and add the vanilla. 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and again, you've heard me say this many times, but don't be tempted. Even though you get 3 times as much for the same price, never ever buy imitation vanilla. Always, always, always get the real thing. You know what a bargain hunter shopper I am. You know that I like to save money with the best of them, but I don't scrimp on butter. When I'm baking, I don't replace butter with margarine, and I never replace vanilla with imitation vanilla. So 1 teaspoon of vanilla goes in there. Going to get all that mixed together nicely, and And it looks like that is looking nice and good to go. So now the next thing it says for us to do is mix together all of our dry ingredients. I'm going to use this Pampered Chef bowl because it's clear and you can see it. So the next thing is 3 cups of flour. This is just all-purpose flour. So going to level that off. 1 and 2 cups, and that makes 3. So 3 cups of flour. And then it calls for 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I went ahead and got all my measuring spoons out so I knew exactly how much I needed. So there's my 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And again, measure it apart so that if you need to level it off, you're doing it over your container and not where it's going to fall in there and get more in than you need. My baking soda is just about to the end, so I'm going to dump it over my other container here and hope that I think I'm barely going to have enough to just make it. So I think I need to put baking powder on my grocery list next time I go and make sure that if I need to make biscuits or something for somebody in my family, I'm going to have enough. So I barely have it, so there's a teaspoon of baking powder, and I am tapped out of baking powder here at the McFarland house. Let me grab a spoon and get all this mixed together. So all my dry ingredients are here. And again, it is 3 cups of flour, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of baking powder. And basically, that is it. All I have left to do is drop in my blueberries, and we are going to be good to go. So I'm going to halt the video for just a moment. I'm going to run to the freezer and get my blueberries, and then I'll be right back to show you what comes next. Okay, and I'm back with my blueberries. So here I wanted you to see my big bag that comes out of the freezer. In fact, this is probably a 2-gallon bag. So if I either go and pick them myself, or I buy them pre-picked, or I just run to the grocery store when they're on sale, I open up a Ziploc bag, I throw them all in there, I zip that back, squeeze it together, and they are good to go. I put those in the freezer, and that's where they're going to go back right now. So I'm going to set those aside for just a moment. I took out a cup, I went ahead and washed them and dried them a little bit. So it calls for me to hold back, the recipe calls to hold back just a cup of the flour, because we're going to dredge these blueberries in the flour mixture. And what that does is it sort of keeps the blueberries from just all falling to the bottom, and kind of helps make sure that they're kind of floating throughout the batter, if you will. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and add all of the dry ingredients that are mixed together, the flour, to my butter mixture, and let this get mixed up. Just in case the flour starts to fly, I'm going to put my little shield on here. I'm going to do that on a low until it's thoroughly mixed and mixed really, really well. So we're going to beat that together well. Then I'm going to sort of mix the blueberries in. So I'm going to go ahead and put the flour back in the bowl using my clear bowl so you can see this. Let me move the flour and all these things out of the way to give you a clearer line of vision. My blueberries have now been washed. I took them out of the bag, not washed. I washed them. They're a little frozen, but that's okay because they're going to bake and kind of almost stay together more nicely in the batter if they're still frozen. So I kind of like to put them in there frozen so they don't get too squishy in the batter. So they're dredged in there nicely. This looks like it's all getting mixed together. Let me clean down the sides a little bit to make sure that everything is getting mixed in, and it is. Just a little bit of flour that's made its way up the sides, and we're going to be in business and good to go. This recipe is so yummy and just sort of tastes like summer. So I love to make it, and I love it that it's so easy. If you don't want to make a complete pound cake, if you're an empty nester, for example, like me, and you just want to make this into little loaves, so it's just enough for maybe you and your hubby or enough to share with a friend, you can easily put this in loaf pans, large loaf pans or smaller ones. You'll just need to adjust your cooking time and watch it so that it doesn't get burnt or overdone. But that's a great way to make and to use up your pound cake. Okay, I think we're ready to drop in the mixture here. And I don't want to make a mess on this side, so I'm gonna go in from this side, sort of drop all this in. Hopefully, I was gonna take the pan off, but I think I can do it, take the bowl off, but I can do it that way. Okay, now, I'm gonna just do this on the very lowest setting and let it just get barely mixed in. And we're gonna be ready to put it in our little paper baking pans. Now, it's a little scary, isn't it, to put paper in the oven, but trust me, it works. The instructions also say that you do not have to grease this, you do not have to spray this. It's pre-treated and ready to go. So I'm going to be curious to see just how far this batter will go in these little paper baking pans. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all this off. My paddle, because the butter is cold, it kind of sticks together nicely. And my blueberries started to get mixed in a little bit and broken up, but that's okay. Don't want to waste any of this yummy batter, so I'm going to clean that paddle off as best as I can. And then we're going to put that in here. My oven beeped at me, so it's going to be ready to go. And we're going to be in business. I'm going to go ahead and spoon this in. And it is thick. A pound cake, if you've made pound cake before, you know that it is a thick type batter, and it's part of what gives it that delicious, very dense and very moist texture and makes for a yummy flavor. It's all that butter in there, so I'm going to just drop this in. The instructions for these little paper baking pans say to fill it about halfway up and not to overfill. So I'm just sort of dropping this in to try to be sure that I'm about halfway up when I get this spread out. It is, again, very thick, but that's just the nature of the pound cake. So I'm going to spread that out a little bit here, and then we'll put it in and give it a go. And I promise that I will come back after this is baked and take a photo so you can see what it looks like when it's completely baked. I'm probably going to give one of these away today and then freeze a couple of them so that I'll have those at the ready when I'm going to host a dinner party. I've got dessert already, or maybe there'll be someone that just needs some encouragement that I need to drop something by, and I love having something already prepared in my freezer that I can run over with something sweet when I want to love on someone. So here we go. Now, I think you can see how I've got that filled up just about halfway. So that one is finished. I'm going to go ahead and fill my other two. I'm going to get this in the oven. Going to bake it at 325. The original recipe for the full tube pan or bundt pan calls for this to bake for 1 1/4 hours. So that's a lot, 75 minutes. So because this is a much smaller pan than a regular full-size bundt pan or tube pan, obviously it's going to bake a lot quicker. So I'm going to keep an eye on it. I'm going to sort of monitor what's going on, have my little cake tester ready, because I don't want to over bake this and ruin it. But I think it's going to bake in a smaller amount of time, and we'll see how it goes. One of these may be enjoyed sooner, and a couple of the others may go in the freezer to be used to bless someone, to share with someone that just needs to know that they're loved, and what a sweet way to let someone know that you're thinking about them. So I will take a photo when this is all finished and let you see what the finished product looks like. But I know the recipe is delicious, and again, if you would like to make this up and put it in smaller loaf pans and just have smaller amounts, it works great to do that. But it is National Blueberry Month in the month of July, so go ahead and get those blueberries in the freezer. It's just so easy to hold on to blueberries for later in the year when you have to do absolutely nothing. Unlike putting up other types of fruits or vegetables with all the canning and the preparation that takes place, these delicious super fruits can simply be tossed into a freezer safe package, zipped closed, and toss and put away in the freezer. I keep them for months, and they are just wonderful in your oatmeal or in your recipes, and so good for you. This super fruit packed with healthy ingredients that also taste so delicious. So I hope that you will pick up some blueberries in your local grocery store or at your local blueberry patch. Get those in the freezer. Hope you might try my recipe for blueberry pound cake. And I absolutely absolutely hope that you will download a copy of the Do It list to help you get things in order and get things clean and tidy and get yourself into a good routine. Maybe give our Do It list a whirl and see if that would work for you. It's just intended to be a tool to help you. And then also our Write the Word bookmark for the month of July is the word trust. Last week's video references this. I love the way our graphic designer Beth always does such a good job of making sure the graphics coordinate. So these two sort of go hand in hand, kind of a typical Mary and Martha. So we are going to be Marys sitting at the feet of Jesus and getting into his word. And then we're going to be Marthas up and going and managing home and hearth well. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I'm Laura McFarland. Leave me a note below and let me know your favorite way to use blueberries at your house. Have a blessed week.